y'all, welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here, hello and welcome. Today's video is going to be a 7-day foundation wear test with the newest one from Maybelline. I wore this foundation for 7 days. I tried it with multiple primers, powders, and setting sprays. That way I could give you my final thoughts on this foundation in one video. Now for reference, I am 39 years old. I have normal dry leaning skin. I live in a very hot, humid climate, and generally I prefer a foundation that's going to be light to medium coverage and it's going to have more of a natural skin-like finish. That's not to say that I don't have foundations in my collection that are full coverage with a more matte finish that I absolutely love. It's just my personal preference. All of those things to kind of take into consideration as you watch this. Now I will have this foundation as well as everything else that I am wearing in all of these looks listed and linked down below in the description box. I don't know if I'll be able to put absolutely everything down there because it is 7 days worth of looks and it's not a whole lot of space down there, but if you're ever curious about anything, just leave a comment and I will steer you in the right direction. But without further ado, let's jump into this. Alright y'all, so this is the Maybelline Superstay Up to 30 Hour Wear Lumi-Matte Longwear Foundation. Now this is going to retail for $14.99 and it's going to come in 24 different shades. So not the best shade range on the market by any means, but it's also not the worst, especially for a more affordable brand, which don't tend to have the best shade ranges to begin with. But don't get me wrong, it could 100% use some work. But this is going to be infused with amino acids to give you breathable coverage with a luminous matte finish. And that right there is what really intrigued me. The whole luminous matte finish thing, because that's very contradictive and you can't have both. So we're gonna find out if it's luminous or it's matte. But this foundation does have quite the repertoire behind it, so just bear with me while I read all of these claims for y'all. So this is supposed to deliver long wear, buildable, full coverage that lasts all day. You're going to achieve a flawless base with their light as air formula that feels like nothing on the skin. The formula's flexible film resists sweat, water, and transfer and lasts up to 30 hours for all day shine control. Stay flawless no matter what the day has in store for you. Superstay Lumi-Matte Foundation is a vegan formula, no animal-derived ingredients, non-comedogenic, and fragrance-free, suitable for all skin types, even sensitive skin. So we're going to give this a good whirl. We're going to do our full 7-day wear test, and today is day 1. So I'm going to apply this to my entire face with no primer, powder, or setting spray. The only thing I am wearing is my skincare and my SPF. So I'm going to do one half of my face with a sponge, the other half with a brush. I'll throw on some bronzer, blush, and highlighter, and then go throughout my day. At the end of the day, I will give you my first check-in. So let's get this party started. I picked up shade 102, which is the lightest one in the range. I know, not the best shade range because I am a pale girl, but I'm also not the palest out there to begin with. So let's go ahead and open her up. This does come in a glass bottle. It has a nice little pump up here. This is just a really cheap plastic cap. Not too mad about it, but you know, it is what it is. So we're gonna start by pumping this onto my sponge and applying it to one half of my face. This is very liquidy. You can see it kind of running down the sponge. So I'm gonna start on this side of my face. I should have pulled my hair out of my face. I'll do that in just a minute. All right, so upon application, this does have a luminosity to it, but I am going in with a damp sponge, so that's kind of to be expected. I'm getting light coverage, maybe light medium. I still see quite a bit of my redness poking through. It's just kind of giving me like a my skin but better finish. So we'll see if this is going to be buildable, and we'll see what it does when we go in with a brush. Alright, so this is what the foundation is looking like applied to one half of my face with the sponge. I am going to go back and apply it to the other half with a brush, but I just wanted to show you a side-by-side of what we're looking like. So it definitely took down some of the redness, but you can still see it poking through. So like I said, this is giving me more of a light to medium coverage. I don't think you're going to be able to thin it out any more than this because I did go in very light-handed. I didn't use very much at all, but I do think it looks very natural on the skin. It blended in really nicely. It's not sitting on top. It doesn't feel heavy, cakey, or anything like that. But let's go ahead and apply it to the other half with a brush. So I'm going to go with my BK Beauty 101, and just like I did with the sponge, I'm going to apply almost a full pump on my brush, and then we're just going to kind of spread it out and then stipple it on the skin, building it up and pressing it in. So I'm going to start with one initial coat, and then we'll go back and see if we can build this up to a full coverage like it claims to. All right, so the foundation is applied and this is what we were looking like. And I feel like I got the same results with the brush as I did with a sponge, but it was a little faster to blend out with the sponge than it was with the brush, but that's kind of to be expected. But I do want to go back and see if we can build this up to a full coverage because that's exactly what it claims to do. So I'm going to go back in with my sponge and add a little bit more foundation. And I'm just going to start bouncing it more so right here on my cheek where I have that extra redness, my freckles going on. Bring it down onto my chin where I've got some old scarring. I'm not going to take it too much onto my forehead because other than deep lines, I don't really have anything to cover up there. But this is building up. I think I've got a pretty solid medium. We're like right on that edge of full. So let's do a little bit more. I'm wondering if at any point it's going to start to feel cakey or heavy or start to pill or grab or just kind of flake off. So we're just going to build up a little bit more right here. All right, so I'm definitely getting a full coverage with this. I don't think it's the fullest coverage in the world, but it still looks and feels very lightweight. It's not cakey or heavy. It's not sinking in or clinging to anything. So it's definitely gonna hold on to that very natural finish that it claims to have. But this is not a matte foundation by any means. I can definitely see that luminosity on both sides with the sponge and with the brush. So I don't know where the Lumi-Matte comes from. Maybe it's gonna dry down to a matte finish. We'll see as the day goes on, but I'm gonna build up my other side. That way I'm a little bit more balanced. All right, so foundation is on. First impression, I really love the way this looks on my skin. The shade match is pretty decent as well. It could probably be a tiny bit cooler, but that's just a shade match thing that has nothing to do with the formula. But I do think this looks very natural and beautiful on the skin. It is very lightweight. It has a very thin kind of serum-like consistency. It feels hydrating and cooling, but it doesn't feel sticky, thick, or like greasy or oily on my skin. And it doesn't feel super tacky either. It doesn't feel like it's dried down to a powder finish, but it doesn't feel like anything is going to stick to my face if I were to leave it unpowdered, which we are going to leave it unpowdered all day. But I'm going to go ahead and throw on some concealer, bronzer, blush, and highlighter, and I will come back and show you what my makeup is looking like. So the rest of my makeup is on, and this is what my complexion is looking like. And upon application, I think it looks absolutely beautiful. It looks and feels very lightweight, very natural on my skin. It gave me a good solid full coverage, but it's not like a full coverage where it's going to erase everything on your skin. It did dry down just a little bit more, but it's not a full on powdered finish, but it's also not a sticky finish either. It feels very skin-like, but it also feels like it's locked in place and it's not gonna go anywhere. But I'm really impressed with how natural this looks on the skin. I wouldn't say that this is a matte finish, but I also wouldn't say it's a luminous foundation. It has a very skin-like finish to it, which I do prefer, and it is something that I look for in a foundation. And I think all of the products that I applied over top went on really nicely. Nothing grabbed, pulled, or pilled. Nothing lifted the foundation underneath. It all meshed together really nicely. But before I go throughout the rest of my day, I do want to set half of my face with setting spray. So we're going to go in with the Tarte LifeLock setting spray. I've only used this one time, so I don't have a good feel for it, but I figured that this would be a really good one to test out with this foundation. So just like I did with the ABH Impeccable foundation, if you watch that video, I am going to cover half of my face, spray one half, and then we'll see which side wears better throughout the day. So I'm just going to give this a good shake, and then we're going to spray. Now this one does have a little bit more of an aggressive sprayer. It doesn't leave like water droplets or anything like that on the skin, but it is going to soak you pretty quickly. So you don't need a whole lot, especially if you're like me who likes to soak your skin and then kind of press it in. It doesn't take me nearly as much of this as it does some of the other setting sprays in my collection, but I'm gonna go ahead and press this in, kind of meshing it with everything. Looks very nice, brought a little bit of luminosity back to my skin. All right, so I'm happy with the way that my makeup is looking. I'm gonna go throughout the rest of my day, and I will see y'all later on this evening for our first check-in. Day one check-in. I've had this foundation on for roughly 10 hours at this point, and first thing that I want to note is that this foundation does dry down to a full-on matte finish, which is not a preferred finish for me, and because of that, it does look a little heavy and cakey around my mouth right here. Not the most flattering in person, but it did also kind of sink into the lines on my forehead just a little bit. I have said before, I have very deep lines on my forehead, and most foundations do sink into them, but other than that, it stayed in place and looks really nice. Even right here on my nose, it wore off just a little bit where I wear my glasses all day, but other than that, I think this foundation does look absolutely beautiful. But for me personally, I think I'm going to need something more hydrating under this foundation, or maybe mixed into it to give that little bit of luminosity back to it, so maybe it'll wear a little bit more natural on my skin. So I think that's probably what we're going to try tomorrow, but we will see. But so far so good. It did hold up absolutely beautifully. For day two, I want to pair this foundation with more of a hydrating primer, so I'm going to go in with my Merit Great Skin Priming Moisturizer. This is very comparable to the Bobbi Brown Vitamin Enriched Face Base. It's not quite as thick, but it's still very rich, creamy, and deeply hydrating, and it looks really nicely under more mattifying foundations. So I'm hoping that this is going to take away from a little bit of that mattifying effect where it looked real makeup-y and heavy around my mouth, and just give it more of a natural skin-like look to the skin. So I've let that sink into my skin for just a couple of minutes, and now we're going to go in with the foundation, and I am going to apply this with a brush all over my face today. So I'm just going to start by kind of stippling it where I want it, and then I'll go back and press it in to my skin. I'm going in with just about a pump all over my face. A little bit does go a long way, and this is going to give me more of a medium coverage. You can build this up to a full coverage, but I'm not typically a full coverage gal, so I'm going to stick with medium coverage today. We'll try it on another day with more full coverage all over the skin, but since I did medium or full coverage on my first day, I want to lighten it just a little bit and see how it's going to wear. All right, so foundation is on. It definitely looks a little bit more glowy upon application today than it did yesterday, probably because I had that more hydrating primer on over top, but about an hour or so in is when it really dried down and sort of mattified on my skin. So we'll see what it does. I'll try and film it after it's dried down completely to show you what I'm talking about, but I do think this lays nicely on the skin. It doesn't look cakey or heavy upon application, and other than around my mouth, it looked beautiful throughout the day yesterday. So I'm gonna go ahead and throw on my concealer, bronzer, blush, and highlighter, and then I'll come back and show you what we're looking like. So before I set half of my face with setting spray, I wanted to show you what my complexion is looking like with the rest of my makeup on. Now, just like yesterday, the products that I applied over top melted in with this foundation beautifully. I didn't have any issues with them lifting the product underneath, nothing patched, nothing pilled, nothing skipped or did anything funky, and I think the foundation still looks beautiful on my skin. Keep in mind though that this is not dried down 100%, so it still has that more natural glow skin-like finish, but I'm assuming as the day goes on, it will dry down to that more mattified powder finish that I achieved yesterday. But let's go ahead and set half of my face. So I'm going to go in with my same Tarte LifeLock setting spray that I used yesterday. I'm going to cover half of my face and we're going to spray. All right, so I'm gonna let this dry down for just a couple of minutes, and then I'm gonna go throughout the rest of my day. I will try and check in once I feel like this has dried down 100% so I can show you what it's looking like, but I will definitely come back this evening and give you my check-in on day two. All right, so it's the end of day two. I've only had this foundation on for about 8 hours, and I decided to check in now because this foundation does not look good paired with that more hydrating primer underneath. It never dried down to a full matte finish or like a powdery feel to my skin. It stayed very glowy all day, which at first I really liked, but it's like breaking down around my mouth. It's coming apart and separating. It's kind of wearing off like around here on my cheeks. It's sinking into my forehead. Like, it is just not wearing very well at all. So I definitely don't think this is pairing very well with at least that hydrating primer. Maybe it was too much hydration. Maybe it would do better with like a glow booster mixed into it. But based off of today's wear test, I liked it better yesterday. And that's saying a lot for someone who doesn't like a matte foundation. So I'm going to kind of figure out how I want to change this up overnight. And then tomorrow we're going to try a whole different combo. So for day three, I want to try this foundation with a different hydrating primer, maybe something that's not quite as thick and rich as the one that I used yesterday, and see what kind of results we get. So I'm going to go in with this one from Chantecaille. This is the Sheer Glow Rose Face Tint. This is hydrating, but it's not quite as thick, and it adds a nice little glow to the skin. I've really been enjoying this one. So I'm just going to pick up what is on the little seal thing that comes on the container, and I'm just going to rub this into my skin, and of course I will let it sit for a couple of minutes. I do want to try this foundation with the primer that I used yesterday again, but I want to set it with powder, so maybe tomorrow we'll do that. But I want to start here because I feel like I was onto something with the whole hydrating primer under this foundation for my skin. So now that has sat for a couple of minutes, I'm going to go in with my foundation. So I'm using the same brush that I used yesterday, and I'm just going to press this into my skin, building it up and blending it out. I think I'm going to build it up just a little bit on top of itself. I don't want to take it to like a full coverage. That made no sense, but I don't want to take it to a full coverage, but I definitely want to take it a little bit more than what I had yesterday. So I'm just going to build and press into my skin. Alright, so I went ahead and finished my makeup with the rest of my complexion products, and just like it has the past couple of days, it looks absolutely beautiful upon application. It looks very natural, very hydrated. It doesn't look overly glowy. It doesn't look super matte. Again, it's not dried down 100%, but all the products went on over top really nicely, and I didn't have any issues applying this foundation over the primer. So far so good, just like yesterday, but we'll see how this wears throughout the rest of the day. But I am going to go ahead and set my face. So I'm going to set half of my face again, just like I have been doing. So I'm going to give this a good little shake, grab my little postcard here, and give us a good spray. All right, so I'm going to give that just a minute or two to dry down, and then I'm going to go throughout the rest of my day, and I'll come back later this evening and we'll see how this foundation wore today. All right, y'all, so it's the end of day 3, and I've had this foundation on for about 12 hours, and I have to say, I'm not overly excited with the way that my complexion is looking at the end of the day. It doesn't look like a total mess like it did yesterday, and it's also not super drying, looking like it was on day 1, but it just doesn't look as good as I want it to at the end of a long day. I've got other foundations in my collection that still look flawless at the end of the day, but I will say that it did hold up a lot better around my nose and my mouth area, and even on my forehead, but just like right over here on my cheeks and like right along my jawbone, I feel like it wore off just a little bit, not like blotchy or cakey looking. It just doesn't look as flawless as it did when I first put it on. And something else that I want to note is that this is the side of my face that I set with the setting spray, and personally, I don't see a difference from side to side. I don't feel like this is more mattifying over here. I don't feel like this side held up any better than this side over here. So I don't know, y'all. So far, I'm kind of 50-50 on this foundation. Like, I love the way that it looks when I apply it. I'm just not too keen on the way that it wears throughout the day. But tomorrow, we're going to try a whole new approach at this foundation and see what happens. So moving on to day 4, I want to try this foundation the same way I did yesterday, but I want to set it down with more of a radiant powder to see if it's going to keep it from breaking down and extend the longevity without giving me too much of a mattified finish. So I'm going to go in with my same primer that I went in with yesterday, and then we'll apply the foundation over top. So I'm just going to pick up a little bit, and just as I always do, put it on my skin, work it in, and let it sit for just a couple of minutes. All right, so next I'm going to go ahead and apply the foundation. I'm going to use the same brush that I've been using. So I'm just going to disperse it a little bit and then press it into my skin, giving me the same coverage that I got yesterday. All right, before I set my face, I'm going to go in with a little bit of concealer right here under my eyes. I'm just going in with my NYX Pro Fix Concealer, and then I am going to set it with my Pat McGrath Blurring Under Eye Powder in the shade Baby Pink, and then we'll apply some powder over top the rest of my face. So to set the rest of my face, I'm going to go in with my e.l.f. Halo Glow Powder. This has a little bit of a luminosity to it. It's not going to mattify my skin by any means, but it is going to hold everything in place. So that's why I'm going in with this powder. So I'm just going to put a little bit in my lid, and then I'm going to pick it up with a big fluffy brush, and I'm just going to start by pressing it in, and then once I have it evenly pressed into my skin, I'll go back and sort of buff it in. That way I can make sure that there's not any like unset areas on my face, and it's also not clinging or grabbing or cakey or anything like that. Okay, the rest of my face is set. I think it looks really nice. I do like the way this looks with that primer and the powder over top. It's set down, but it doesn't have a matte finish to it. But we're gonna go ahead and throw on some bronzer, some blush, and some highlighter. So I'm actually gonna go in with a What's Up Beauty bronzer. I picked this up a little while back and I have yet to test it out. So I wanna go ahead and try it out. I also picked up a blush as well, but I picked up the bronzer in the lightest shade, which is going to be light. And this is what the bronzer looks like like. So I've heard really good things about this. I don't need another bronzer, but I love bronzers and I can't help myself. So I'm just going to pick it up with a brush, like a fluffy one, and I'm just going to apply it over here, like on my cheeks, around the perimeter, my forehead, anywhere I normally would. And I just want to see what this is going to look like on my skin, what the formula is like, all of that. I feel pretty good testing this out over all of this because it's a powder product, so it's not going to do anything funky, I don't think. Next, I'm going to go in with the blush that I picked up. This is in the shade Peaceful Pizza, and it's the lightest one that they had. I got the little bundle that they had on their site, but I do like this bronzer. I think it's really pretty on my skin. It's not too warm. It's not too cool tone leaning. It doesn't have like a weird yellow undertone to it, and it's very buildable in pigmentation. It also has like a soft luminosity to it. It's not glowy, but it's not like a flat matte either. But let's go in with a little bit of the blush. So this is the blush shade that I picked up, just a really pretty pink blush. So let's apply this to the cheeks and see what this is going to look like. These are just absolutely beautiful. I love the way they look in the pan with that kind of marbled effect. And let's see what this is going to look like on my cheeks. I hope this isn't too light for my skin. I don't mind it if it's buildable, but I definitely want it to have some color to it. That's really pretty. It's just like a nice flush of color. It's not in your face. It's not overly pigmented, and it just looks like my skin, but better, honestly. Really pretty, but I'm interested in some maybe the other shades that they have to offer. Maybe those would be a little bit more up my alley, but I'm not disappointed in this at all. Okay, so the rest of my makeup is on, and I really like the way everything looks. I don't feel like I need to throw on a highlighter because that blush has a little bit of a luminosity to it. It almost has like a gold reflect in it. Absolutely beautiful on the cheeks, and now that I have that blush on, I really love the shade that I picked out. But let's go ahead and set half of this face so I can go throughout the rest of my day. So I'm going to grab my little postcard, and we're going to shake this up. I'm going to go in with the same setting spray I've been using, and we're going to set half this face. All right, so makeup is on. It looks beautiful upon application, just like it has every other day. So I'm eager to see how this is going to wear. So I'm gonna go throughout the rest of my day. Today when I'm filming this is Miss Katie's birthday. So we're doing like a little celebration. I've got a cake to bake and everything. So I will come back this evening and show you what my makeup is looking like. All right, y'all, so I've had this full face of makeup on for roughly 10 hours at this point, and overall, I think this looks really nice at the end of the day. It's not sinking into the lines on my forehead, it's not breaking up around my nose or caking up around my mouth, and it's not wearing off along my jawline like it did yesterday. So I do think this held on really nicely, and I think that this was a good combination for my skin type. Obviously, I have some other primers and powders that I want to try with it, and we still have 3 more days to go, but so far, I'm liking this foundation a little bit more today than I did yesterday, so we'll see what happens tomorrow. So moving on to day 5, we're going to try this foundation with my Milk Makeup Hydro Grip Primer. This is a Holy Grail primer in my collection. I have been using this primer probably since it came out, however many years ago. It adds just the perfect amount of hydration to my skin without over hydrating it, and I like the grippiness that it has. It really kind of holds my foundation in place. So I'm just going to start by smoothing this on and then pressing it into my skin, and of course letting it sit for a couple of minutes. Moving on to the foundation, I'm going to go ahead and apply it with a sponge today, and the reason being is not only do I prefer this foundation with a sponge, but I like to apply foundations over top of this primer specifically with a sponge because it has that grippiness to it, and I feel like if you start to apply it with a brush, it can kind of streak up a little bit on you if you're not careful. So I just prefer to apply my foundations with a sponge over this one. So I'm going to apply this to my whole face just with a nice thin layer. I'm not going to build it up to a full coverage just because that's not a favorite of mine, but I am going to build it up to a solid medium, and then we're going to go in and we're going to set half of my face with powder because I want to kill 2 birds with 1 stone today. Instead of doing it with just the primer and then having to go back and try it with the powder, we can kind of compare side by side to see how this foundation is going to wear. So I went ahead and applied a little bit of concealer and under eye powder, and now we're going to go ahead and set half of my face with my e.l.f. Halo Glow setting powder, the same one that I used yesterday. So I'm just going to put a little bit of this in the cap, and then just like yesterday, I'm going to start by pressing it in, and then once I have the powder on, I'll go back and buff it, and like I said, I'm only going to do half of my face. So we're going to leave the other half unset. Okay, so I went ahead and threw on my bronzer and my blush, and this is what the complexion is looking like. I'm not going to set the face because I don't want to set my entire face and I don't want to set half my face. I just want to see the difference between the primer and then the primer with the powder. So I'm going to go ahead and go throughout the rest of my day, and I will see y'all later this evening for my check-in. All right, y'all, so it's the end of day 5, and I've had this foundation on for about 12 hours at this point, and I don't know about you, but I cannot tell a difference between the powdered side and the unpowdered side. I think both sides wore absolutely beautifully, and I'm very happy with the way that my makeup looks at the end of the day. Nothing sunk into the lines on my forehead. It's not breaking up around my nose or my mouth area. It's not clinging into anything. It's not wearing off along my jawline. It just looks as beautiful as it did whenever I applied it at the beginning of the day. So for me, I think the combination of the Milk Makeup Hydro Grip and this foundation is sheer perfection for my skin type, but we do still have 2 more days to go, so we'll see what happens with those. All right, y'all, so for day 6, I'm gonna go ahead and just switch up the primer today. So I'm gonna go in with this one from Iconic London. This is the Underglow Blurring Primer, and that's exactly what it does. It gives a little bit of blurring, a little bit of glow. It's not too hydrating and greasy, so I'm hoping it doesn't break this foundation down like the other hydrating primers I have used have. So we'll see how this one reacts, but per usual, I'm going to kind of press it into my skin, blend it out really nicely, and then let it sit for a couple of minutes. All right, so I'm just going back in with my sponge and applying that foundation all over my skin. So again, I'm just bouncing it and pressing it, dispersing it, blending it into my skin. And once I have this on, I'm going to go back in with the rest of my makeup, and then I'll come back and show you what we're looking like. All right, y'all, so the rest of my makeup is on, and I did powder my entire face with the e.l.f. Halo Glow setting powder that I used yesterday, and then I also set my face with my ABH Impeccable setting spray, mostly because I wanted to take away a little bit of that powdery look that I was having going on and kind of mesh everything together, but I also want to see if this is going to extend the longevity of this makeup and keep it from like breaking up or doing anything strange, which has been very hit or miss with this foundation so far. So we'll see what happens, but I'm going to go throughout the rest of my day, and I will see y'all later on this evening for my final check-in for today. All right, y'all, so it's the end of day 6, and I've had this foundation on for roughly 12 hours at this point, and this is not this foundation's finest moment. I will say that. It is sinking into the lines on my forehead, like they are up front and center, and right here around my nose on both sides, it is like breaking apart and coming off. This is where my glasses sit, but I'm talking about like this little area right here, like I don't know what's going on with that either. And then around my mouth, it didn't break up or fall apart, but it is clinging and emphasizing all of my texture that I have going on down here. So the only thing that I can figure is it's the primer that I paired this foundation with. And I don't normally have that issue with this primer. It is newer in my collection, but I have paired it with other foundations and haven't noticed any issues. But I think it really boils down to this is a very finicky foundation for my skin type. I have found that it wore really well with the Milk Makeup Hydro Grip, but then some days it wears well with primer, some days it doesn't. It's just finicky, and it really depends on the condition of my skin. I do still have 1 more day to test out this foundation, and we're gonna do the whole shebang. We're gonna do how I would normally do my makeup and see what it does, but so far I'm not loving this foundation and I'm not hating this foundation, and more importantly, I don't find this to be the best for me for long wear, but we'll see what happens tomorrow. Okay, so it's day 7, which means this is our last day to wear test this foundation, at least for this video it is, and I'm just gonna go ahead and do my makeup the way that I would normally do it from day to day if I wasn't testing out a new foundation. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started with my Milk Makeup Hydro Grip Primer, and again, I'm just going to apply this all over my face, pressing it in, distributing it, and then let it sit for just a couple of minutes. All right, so I do want to try mixing this foundation with a glow booster and see what it does. Obviously, we're going in with primer and powder and all of that, but I still want to see if it's going to give a little bit of luminosity back to this foundation and kind of take away from that cakiness that I'm noticing around my mouth. So I'm going to go ahead and start by putting a little bit of my foundation on my little palette right here. So I'm going to do about 1.5 pumps, not quite 1.5 pumps, and then I'm going to take my Auric Glow Last in the shade Morganite, and I'm going to do about 0.5 pump. And then I'm going to mix these together, and we're going to apply this to the face. And I think for today I'm going to apply this with a brush. So I'm just going to mix it up really good. All right, so I'm just going to apply this foundation all over my face now that I have it mixed up really well, and we're gonna see what kind of results we get. So far, I'm definitely getting more of a sheen, more of a glow, not anything that I'm mad about because I do like my foundation to have a little bit of a glow to it, but it definitely kind of thinned this out. I'm not getting quite as much coverage as I did before when I went in with a brush and didn't add a glow booster in. So we are gonna try and build this up and see if this is going to build up on itself without pilling, grabbing, lifting, or doing anything funky. Okay, so this is what we're looking like with one layer of the foundation on, and it's definitely giving me more of a medium coverage. I would say it's teetering more so on the line of like a light medium coverage, but we're gonna go ahead and throw on a little bit more and see if this is going to build up on top of itself. So I'm just gonna build it up right here on my cheeks where I have a little bit more redness, some freckles, and just some imperfections going on, and see what this is going to do. I don't know how well this is going to build up on itself. It is building up a little bit, but it's giving me more of a solid medium. So if you want that full coverage with this foundation, you're definitely going to want to make sure that you don't mix anything into it. But I am really liking the way this is looking. But so far, I've always liked the way this foundation looks upon application. It's the wear that's kind of throwing me off with this one. So for concealer, I'm just going in with my Refi concealer. I just threw a little bit on under my eyes. I don't think I need any anywhere else. I do have like a little breakout right here, but it is what it is. It doesn't really bother me too much. But I'm gonna go ahead and blend that out with a brush. And then I am gonna set my under eyes with my Pat McGrath under eye powder. And then we'll come back and we'll set the face. So to set the rest of my face, I'm going to go with my Charlotte Tilbury Airbrush Flawless Finish Setting Powder. Try saying that 3 times fast. I'm surprised I didn't stumble over it just saying it then. But look, y'all, I hit pan on this powder the other day. I was so excited. I wish I had been filming it when I did, but I love it when I get to hit pan on a product because that means that I am actually using it. And there's something so satisfying about just seeing a product get used and loved in your collection. But I'm going to go ahead and press this into my skin like I always do. And once I have it pressed in really well, I'm going to go back with circular buffing motions just to make sure that everything is nice and distributed. We don't have it clinging anywhere. There's not any excess powder, nothing like that. For bronzer, I'm going to go in with my Jones Road bronzer. This is in the shade Dusty Rose. I'm just going to buff this into my skin, giving a little bit of color and life back to my skin because we're looking a little flat. Next, we're going to do a little bit of blush. I'm just going in with this one from ColourPop. This is one of their lip and cheek balms. This is in the shade Love Interest that just came out with one of their newer collections. So I'm just going to press this over top, blending it out. I haven't had any issues with this lifting any of my powder, my foundation, anything. So I really wanted to get some more use out of this because this is a beautiful color and I've really been enjoying this formula from ColourPop. Before I throw on some highlighter, I'm going to go in with my Hourglass Ambient Lighting Trio palette. I just kind of take it, swirl my brush through the whole thing, and I'm going to just put a little bit of this over top as a finishing powder just to keep a little bit of that luminosity, but still have my face set. And hopefully this will keep me from looking too matte throughout the day. All right, now we're gonna go in with highlighter, and I'm gonna go with my Fenty Beauty Demi Glow highlighter in the shade Too Much. So I'm just gonna pick this up and I'm gonna put a little bit right here over my cheekbone. I honestly don't know why these are called the Demi Glow highlighter because there is nothing Demi Glow about these. They are blinding, but they are absolutely beautiful. I love how this just melts into the skin, and I'm so happy to have this pack in my collection. I have missed it so much. All right, so the complexion is on. We're gonna go ahead and set the face. I did throw on a little bit of lip balm on my lips. I'm about to film an eye look and I don't know what lip combo I wanna do, but I wanted to give a little bit of hydration back to the skin. So I went in with one of the Pillow lip balms from Too Faced. I believe this is a reformulation, and I know that they brought us some more shades. I picked up the one shade in Banana Kiss, and this is so comfortable and hydrating on the lips, and it doesn't come off yellow. It just has like a kind of a clear glossy look to it. It's thick, but it's not so thick that it feels goopy on your lips, but a little bit goes a long way. But let's go ahead and set this face. So I'm gonna go in with the Tarte LifeLock setting spray that I've been testing out, and we're just gonna spray it all over the face. We're not gonna do half the face today. All right, so I'm gonna kind of fan that in just a little bit. And then once it's almost dried down, I'm gonna go ahead and press it in with this little velour puff that I have right here. And then I'm gonna go throughout the rest of my day, and I will see y'all later this evening for my final check-in and my final thoughts on this foundation. So here we are at the end of day 7. I've had this foundation on for roughly 11 hours at this point, and out of all 7 days that I've worn this foundation, this is by far the best that this foundation has looked at the end of the day. It doesn't look super matte, it doesn't look heavy or cakey, it's not breaking up around my nose and my mouth area or wearing off along my jawline, it's not accentuating texture, and it's not sinking into the lines on my forehead. So overall, I would say that today's wear test was a win, but I do find this foundation to be very finicky. So for that reason, it's not going to be an absolute favorite of mine. I don't hate this foundation, I just don't love it. I have other foundations in my collection that no matter what primer, powder, setting spray I pair them with, it looks beautiful and it lasts on my skin and it never fails. And this one, I have to be really conscious about what I pair with it. So it's not a foundation I would see myself reaching for over and over. It's one that I could see myself reaching for if I'm maybe only going to have it on for a few hours, or maybe I'm only filming and I don't plan on wearing my makeup all day. But I do think that this is a beautiful formula, and if you have combination to oily skin, I think this is going to be a fantastic option, especially if you're looking for something more affordable that is going to wear well on your skin, it's not going to break down, and it's going to have that matte finish. Definitely something to keep in mind, that while it does look very luminous when you put it on, give it about an hour or so and it is going to dry down to a matte finish. Now, as far as the setting spray goes, I don't really have any feelings about it. It kind of meshed everything together nicely. I don't see where it dried down anything to a matte finish, and I don't think it extended the longevity of my makeup, at least not with this foundation. I do still want to keep testing it out with other ones and give it a good run to see if it's just maybe this foundation it doesn't pair with, or maybe it just doesn't do what it's supposed to do at all. So I will keep y'all posted, but that is going to complete this video. I hope y'all enjoyed it. Let me know all of your thoughts down below. Let me know if you picked up this foundation, and if you did and you have a different skin type than me, or even if you had the same skin type, let us know what your experience was with it so that way we can learn from each other. But let's have that conversation, light up that comment section, and as always, I want to thank you all so much for watching my video and spending your time with me. It truly does mean so much to me. And if you like this video, make sure you give it a big thumbs up before you leave. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and click on that notification bell so that you can be notified of all my future posts here on my channel. I do post quite a few videos every single week, and I wouldn't want you to miss one. But until my next video, have a good one. Bye.